This video has been created to help you understand some more information about footnotes and bibliographic entries. This paper is a PhD paper that somebody put together, and we're not expecting you to go into this detail in length, but the way the person put the footnotes together and the bibliographic entries together is the model that we follow at SUM. So on this particular page, at the end of the page, the student started this sentence: grounded theory methods are composed of systematic inductive guidelines for collecting and simultaneously analyzing data with the goal of constructing theoretical frameworks that explain the collected data. You see here that footnote number 5 is at the end of that sentence. And that footnote is on page 67. Okay, don't freak out. We're not asking you to write papers that are 67 pages long. Remember, I said this was a PhD student's paper. The point of this illustration is wherever the footnote ends, that's the footnote goes at the end of the sentence. All right, so we didn't put the footnote number up here at the beginning of the sentence. The footnote number goes at the end of the sentence. So if I go down to the bottom of page 67 and I look at footnote number 5, you see that I've indented. I've got the person's first name, then their last name, then a comma. This happened to be a chapter, so the chapter is in quotation marks with a comma. It was in the book that was edited by these two people, and since this is the name of the book, it is italicized. I have my parentheses around my publication information and the page number, so that anybody who ever read this paper, they could go to this particular book, to this particular edition of this book. They could look on page 249, and they would find that information right there. As we go on, we see that there is another sentence that has a footnote in it. This means that this sentence, this whole thing, came from outside of the student's brain. And so let's see where this sentence idea came from. It says IBID 250. This is telling me as the reader that the person that wrote this was using this exact same book, but instead of page 249, the student was getting information from page 250. IBID means that the person found the information that they put in their paper in exactly as the same place as the footnote right before it. So if I wanted to go to page 250 of Kathy Charmez's chapter in the Denson and Lincoln book, Strategies of Qualitative Inquiry, I would find information related to this sentence about the grounded theorist. So the student goes on, and the student actually has a direct quote, essentially an inductive strategy for generating and confirming theory that emerges from the close involvement and direct contact with the empirical world. I know that this did not come out of the student's mind. The student is saying to me, hey, look, I'm making a direct quote. Because it's less than 4 lines long, let's count them. 1, 2, 3. It's less than 4 lines long. We enclose it in quotation marks. This number 7 tells me exactly where this quote came from. So I could go to the library and find this book, Qualitative Evaluation of Research Methods, 2nd edition by Michael Quinn Patton, and I could look on page 153 and I would find this exact quote. You'll notice that all of the first lines of the footnotes are indented. See how that's indented, and that's indented, and that's indented, and that's indented, and that's indented. We always indent the first line of the footnotes as though we are indenting a paragraph. So we go on and we look at this next piece of information, and it says the student got this idea from a book or an article. Let's see what number 8 says. So here the student is telling me, I got that piece of information from this particular place. This happens to be a journal. I know it's a journal because it's italicized. It has a volume number and an issue number and the date and then a colon and then the page number. So the person that's reading this paper could go to page 80 of this particular article, and this is an article, so it's got quotation marks around it. They could go and they could say, I wonder where the student got the idea for this sentence. They could go and look right there and say, oh, she got it out of the Fernandez and Lehman book. Our last example we have another sentence there, and you might be wondering, where did the student get that idea from? Well, the student has footnoted that, and it looks like it came from a book by John Criswell on page 70. Oh, sorry. John Criswell had a book, and she got the information from page 56. And then Lyons and Cole had a book, and she got the information from page 70. So here's an example of a compound footnote where the student has taken two sources, because this whole thing is one book and everything behind it is another book, and they have put it into a compound footnote. Now, in this example, almost every single sentence that the student says, there's a footnote after it. That's because this is a PhD paper. We're not asking you as undergraduates at SUM to put in this many footnotes on a page. The point of me doing this is to show you that when someone is looking at your paper, they want to see this line indicating that this is where your footnotes start. They want all of your footnotes indented on the first line. See how those are all indented? And depending on whether you got your information from a chapter in a book, or whether you got your information from a book, or whether you got your information from a journal article, is going to impact the exact way that you create your footnotes. These are just examples to show you. I encourage you, always refer to the SUM Turabian Writing Guide to know exactly what to do. This year, Turabian 9th edition is the version we're using at SUM. I'm going to pause the recording to take you to the bibliography. Here we are in the bibliography. I've highlighted this name, John Criswell. You'll recall he was one of the people that was listed in our footnotes, but let's go up just a little bit further here, because we also had Kathy Charmaz. You can see that this is an alphabetical order. CH comes before CR. So when you're putting your bibliographic entry together, you're going to want to make sure that you do it in alphabetical order by the author's last name. And don't freak out. I know you're seeing lots and lots and lots of pages here. Again, this was a PhD paper. See, the person's last name, Adar, comes before Adams, comes before Althouse, comes before Ambron. And so hopefully these are things that will help you as you are working on footnoting and bibliographic entries in the Turabian style. Oh, you know what? One more thing I do want to show you. Notice that everything after the first line is indented. This is called a hanging indent. So in the bibliography, make sure that you're flush left here and every second, or even if it happens to have a second or a third line. This is called a hanging indent. Make sure you do that for your bibliography. God bless you. Have a great trimester.